Hey guys, this video is for Unit 2 Lesson 9, and this video will be all about reaching the end goal of this project. We're very close to finishing up our Pong game. There's a couple more things we have to go over, so let's get started. First and foremost, if you're watching this video, your question of the day will vary depending on which class you are in. If you're in my if you're in my 12th grade class, you will have a question that looks like this, where I simply want to know if we want to create interaction in the game, when something happens when you touch another object, what do we need to enable on the Collider 2D component? And if you're in my 11th grade class, your question is as follows. What are triggers in Unity? And if we want objects to interact with another when entering the space, what function should we use? No matter which version of the question you get, the answer will still be roughly similar. And I'm going to actually go over both those answers with you. So before we actually reveal the answers, take a minute to pause this video where it's at. And if you have not done so already, please answer the worksheet. When you finish answering the worksheet, come back to this question and you'll be good to go. I'm going to pause for 5 seconds and then I'm going to reveal the answer. Okay, so the way I'm going to reveal the answer is I'm actually going to show you guys visually inside Unity how all this stuff works. So for the first question, it said if we want to create a game interaction where something happens when one object touches another, what do we need to enable? Well, that's actually pretty simple. We went over this. We went over this in the last video, but if we go into Unity right here, and we have any object with a collider on it, so I'm just going to create an empty object real quick, and just add a box collider. Now, if we want it to be so that whenever another object touches this object, it does something, we need to enable this option right here called isTrigger. So we check that on, and now whenever another object enters this space, it will actually trigger something to happen. Great. So that's for if you're in my 12th grade class. Finally, this one simply says what are triggers in Unity, and if we want an object to react when it touches another, what function do we need to use? For this one, I actually gave you guys a resource that you can use and Google. Here's how this works. I'm just going to simply search hold up. Let's do triggers in Unity. And I'm looking for a very specific resource, but I don't see it right here. Let me type in manual. Here we go. So I give you guys this research to look up when it came to this question. And it's really just a research on colliders. And if you scroll down, you will see a section for triggers. And you guys were supposed to actually read the section and summarize it. The long and short of the section is as follows. This section reads that triggers is something that happens when one object touches another object. Just like how we did with the 12th grade class. And the function that you want to use whenever you want one trigger to do something when another object collides is on trigger enter, like so. All right, cool. Also, let me just highlight this real quick, and then this is the answer to that second question. All right, cool. Now, with that being said, let's jump into the actual work for today. So, here's what's happening. Today, we're going to review colliders. We're going to talk about how we can actually create a score count, and then we're just going to talk about how we can apply physics to our pong ball. At the end of the lesson, there are going to be 2 activities you have to do. Those 2 activities are basically try and create a score count in your game and apply physics to your pong ball. With that being said, lesson 4, reaching the end goal, let's get into it. So, progress check. As a reminder, we're making a game of Pong, and by now you should have created one script that can control the movement for both players, and you should have at least one goal for your player object. What we're going to do, we're going to actually modify that one goal and actually make it so that the goal actually interacts and adds a score whenever we run the game. So let's just quickly review colliders. So again, to create any player interaction, you need these two components. But let's talk about colliders right now. Now, like I mentioned, when you are using colliders, there's only two real components in the collider you need to worry about, or two real parameters you need to worry about: material and its trigger. The material is what we'll use to add physics to our ball, and then we'll do that later on in this lesson. Its trigger, like we said, allows one object to act as a trigger for another. So, let's actually go over how this all works, and I'm going to just get you a guide up to speed where you should be before we actually go into the score count. So, I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to use that same game object that we made right here. And as you can see, I already have this object in the scene. I just press W real quick just so I can move the object right over here. So you'll see that I have the object in the scene. I have this little square here, and this square represents my collider. There's nothing on this object except a transform component and a box collider component. Everything else is basically nothing there. Now, if we want this object to interact when something happens, we just need a simple script. In the last video, I showed you guys how I had you guys right click and make a script for the player one goal. If you already have that, you're good to go. But if you do not, I'm just going to go over that one more time real quick. So I right click, create C# script, and I'm going to do, I'll call this goalie. Why not? And I'll double click in here. Now, like I mentioned in the last video, if we want to create any interaction when another object touches this object, we need to use the function onTriggerEnter2D. We talked about that function right up here, and this is the function we're going to use. So I'm going to go back to my script right here, and let's jump into it. So the way I'm going to do this work is first I'm going to make a function void, and I'll call it onTriggerEnter2D, like so. Open close parentheses. Now, when I open close parentheses, my function automatically populates for me. But again, just to show you guys how this works, I'm going to delete this part and go over it with you guys together. So, when we have this collider 2D right here, what this is doing is it's basically checking, hey, any object that touches this object that has a collider 2D, we're going to do something with it. And we're going to just check that if the object has a collider 2D. If it does, we're going to store it inside this parameter or variable called collision. Now, if it does, if we're going to do, we're going to say, hey, if the object that touched it, which we stored as a collision parameter, and if the object is a game object, we want to do something with it. So basically, this is just getting whatever object touched it, and if that object has a collider 2D, it stores it in here. If the object is a game object, we do something with it. What we're going to do is we're just going to print debug.log. Did this work? Like that. So I'll save this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here. I'm going to click on this object right here, and I'm just going to quickly rename it P1 goal. And I'm going to just add the script onto here, like that. And boom. I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger so it can actually be our actual proper goal. And I'll run the program. This ball is going very slow. Let me actually apply some more force to this ball. And actually change some properties in this ball. First, I'm just going to actually decrease the mass. So 0.1. There we go. And now you see when it touched it, that message appeared. Perfect. Alright, cool. Now, we know that when we're playing a game of Pong, we want it to be that whenever the ball touches that goal, we want it to actually score a point. If we want to actually score a point, we need to use a very certain type of data, and that data is an integer. So the way I like to make all my scripts is I just want to just make sure that all this stuff works. So I'm going to go up here right above the start function. I'll just click here and press enter a couple times. Make sure it's about the start function, and I'm just going to do public int and then call it score. Whenever the game starts, I want that score to be 0. Let me delete this right here. Cool. So now I want to be that whenever this goal is triggered, we want to increase the score. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna do score is assigned to score plus 1. So simply all it's doing is it's getting whatever the variable number of score is, and we're adding 1 to it. I'm gonna save this and let's go back here. Okay. So if I look at my goal object right here, you will see that we now have a variable for score. The reason I made it public is because I want to just make sure it's working before I inside the editor, so I just can see what it's doing right here. So when I run the program, you will see that whenever the ball touches it, the score increases by 1, like so. That's exactly what we want to see. Awesome. Really quickly, if you did not see that, it's because you might have your game mode set to maximize on play, like that. And when you do that, you won't be able to see what's happening on the right-hand side. If that is the case for you, just unplay the game. Make sure maximize on play ticked off, and then you'll be able to see what's happening in your game when you run it, like that. All right, cool. Now, here's the deal with this. This is actually pretty good right now, but I want to first go back to the slide and just go over a couple of things that we just did. So, like I said, when we're talking about the score count, we need to do a couple of things. We needed to first make sure we had a way to add a point to the player, and we just did that by adding an integer. And we needed to just make sure we can keep track of it. We did all that stuff just now. Just to review what we did, we made a way to add points to our player, and we know that we want to use the integer data type to do that. The last thing we want to do, we want to make sure that the only object that the script is looking for is our pong ball object. The way we do that is we just basically going to create an identifier for that pong ball. Now, I'm showing you asking why do we need to create an identifier. Well, the reason why we need to do that because right now the way the script is working is that no matter what object touches this goal, it will score a point. We want to make it so it only when the pong ball touches it scores a point. The way we do that, we're just going to create an identifier for that object. That way we don't have to worry about every object touching it. We only have to worry about one object. So, create an identifier. We made the variable keep track of score. And we created the conditional inside of the goal script. The only thing on this list that we didn't do is create the identifier. So let's actually do that real quick. And I'll show you guys how that works. So, again, we know the script works. This is all good to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my scene view. And I am going to just simply click on the ball object. Now, if you want to create an identifier for your object, that involves something called a tag. So on the top right here, you'll see where it says tag, and right now it says untagged. I'm going to click this, and I'm going to just simply add a tag to this object. Think of a tag as just like a way to identify the object. I'm just going to click this right here. Now, right now, you probably only see player 1 or nothing here. I'm going to click this plus right here. I'm going to call this pong ball, like so. And then I'm going to save that right here. Now, what this did is we created a new tag called pong ball. Now, just because we created a tag doesn't mean it's automatically on the object. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my pong ball again. And where it says untagged, I'm going to click that. I'm going to name it pong ball. Now, if we ever use the tag pong ball, we know that it's looking for this object because pong ball is attached to this object. From there, I can go back into my script, and instead of making it so that whenever any object with the Collide 2D touches it, I'm going to actually just specify to only look for objects with the tag of palm ball. The way it works is that you collision dot game object dot tag is assigned to pong ball, like that. And I just remember I need to do two equal symbol because I want to compare that if this tag is a palm ball, it does something. And I'll save it. Now whenever I run the program, this script will still work. And just to give you guys an example, if I had, say, another palm ball, just hypothetically another palm ball, and this did not have a tag, you'll see that when both these objects touches the goal, one will work and one will not. So if I click on this goal, it added score to one object but not the other, and that's because the other object did not have a tag attached to it. Alright, cool. So I just quickly delete that other object because I just wanted to show you guys this, and now we're going to go back into this right here. So we have our palm ball. We have a goal where we can create a score. Now we're just going to talk about the palm ball physics, and that'll be the last thing we do for today. So let's go into the physics of the palm ball. Like I said, material is how we add the physics, and adding physics in this game is actually pretty simple. So physics involves using something called the physics material, and that allows you to change the physics property of an object. There's only really two properties that you need to worry about when we're doing a 2D object, and that's friction and bounce. If you do not know what friction and bounciness is, please go back to physics. I do not, or Google it. That's the best way to explain it. But of course, if we want something to be bouncy when you touch something, you're just going to affect the bounciness. One thing about this is keep these values ideally between 0.0 and 1.0. That is the ideal way to keep value range to keep it in. You can go higher, but you might get some wonky effects. So let's talk about how we can add physics to our object. Now, the quick disclaimer, it's going to look a little bit different for me than it will be for you because I'm using a different version of Unity. But the way you add physics to your object is you're going to right click. You're going to go to create. Now, this is the part where it's going to look a little bit different. Right underneath your C# script, you will see something called 2D if you're using Unity 2020 and up. I'm using a different version, so I don't have that. But if you click below C# script, you will see 2D and just hover over it. After you hover over it, you'll see a couple options like sprites, sprite atlas, so on and so forth. But you're going to look for what's called physics material 2D. You click that, and I'm just going to simply name this ball bounce, like so. When I name this ball bounce, you'll see that I have my friction and my bounciness. I'm going to turn the friction off. Bounciness, I'll set to 0.5, like so. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the goal object, click on this, and I'm just going to drag this material into here. Cool. Now we have our material for our ball bounce. Sorry, I just realized I put that in the wrong space. What I did was I clicked on the goal and added material to the goal. I don't want that. So I'm going to undo that by pressing Ctrl Z. And now I'm going to click on the pong ball. And you want the physics material added to the pong ball. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the bounce. And I'm going to add it both here and here. You only really need to add it to one of these objects, and you really only need to add it to Collider. But I'm just going to add to both just to see how it looks. Now when I do that, you will see that the ball will bounce off of other objects like so. We got this weird effect with the player, but don't worry about that. I'll show you how to fix that in the next video. If you want it to bounce even more, what you can do is you can increase the bounciness by just clicking on this object, increasing the bounciness a bit more to like 0.7, and now it'll be more bouncy. like so. Alright, cool. So, that's how you can add physics to the object. Here's what you guys want to do for your assignment. Just create a way to keep track of the score for both players. Ideally, you want to make two scripts for each goal, and just add physics to the ball and play around with those properties. Once you do that, you're good to go with this activity. Again, complete those challenges. You will see a Unity package right here inside the assignment for the day. Unit 2, Lesson 9. All it has the objective of what you're completing for the day, and that's really it. Make sure you get that done, and make sure your pawn game looks the way it did in the video right here. With that being said, that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.